This is kind of how it would have looked if you were watching from the outside, and this is how the papers reported it when they finally got hold of the story. 10 minutes shy of midnight on July the 3rd, a van pulled off Coppett's Road into the front drive of the Charles Stanger Care Facility in Muswell Hill, North London. It was just a plain white Bedford van, unmarked, with very high sides, but it parked right in front of the doors in the day marked ambulances only. One woman and two men got out of the van, the woman in an immaculate blue black two-piece, the man in pale blue medical scrubs. The woman was wearing large, severe spectacles, which gave her a stern, schoolteacherly appearance, although she was unsettlingly beautiful too, and she carried herself in a way that made the sternness seem to be an ironic, almost a provocative pose. She checked her reflection in the near side mirror, tilted her head to the left and then to the right, while staring at herself critically out of the corners of her eyes. "You look lovely," said one of the two men. The woman shot him a stern look, and he threw up his hands in ironic apology. "I was only saying." The night was almost oppressively warm and very quiet. The Stanger itself, normally the source of many unsettling sounds at night, screams, sobs, curses, prophetic rants, was unusually still. There were crickets, though, despite the paltriness of the Stanger's grass verges, which seemed too meagre to support an ecosystem. But this was London, after all. Maybe the crickets had to commute like everyone else. The three went in through the swing doors, the woman leading the way. The nurse on duty at the reception desk had seen them pull up and now watched them enter. She had to buzz them in through a second set of doors that had been installed very recently to enhance the Stanger's security. She did so without waiting for them to announce themselves, because she was expecting them. Strictly speaking, that was a breach of security right there. She noticed that the two men didn't look entirely convincing as hospital orderlies. One was a slender Asian man with a certain resemblance to Bruce Lee, and an air that you could, if you wanted to be polite, call piratical. The other wore his scrubs as though they were pyjamas he'd been sleeping in for 3 nights, and had a sardonic, self-assured cast to his features that she instinctively mistrusted. His mid-brown hair was unkempt, and his mouth subtly asymmetrical, hanging down slightly more on one side than on the other, so that when his features were at rest, they seemed to wear either a wry smile or a leer. But these things she noted in passing, because most of her attention had immediately switched to the woman. It wasn't just that she obviously outranked the two men, it was something magnetic about her face and figure that made it an unmixed and startling delight even to look at her. The woman's appearance, to be fair, was both striking and out of the ordinary. Her hair and eyes were black, her skin white, the undiluted white of snow or bone, rather than the muddy pink-beige mix that passes for white according to normal labelling conventions. Since she was dressed in black, relieved only by the occasional hint of dark grey, she could have been a monochrome photograph. The woman gave the nurse a civil nod as she walked up to the desk. "Dr. Powell," she said, in a voice that was as deep as a man's, but infinitely richer in tone and nuance. "From the Metamorphic Ontology Unit in Paddington. We're here to collect your patient." She laid 4 sheets of A4 paper on the countertop, a transfer form from the local authority, a court document granting temporary power of attorney, and 2 copies of a signed and notarized letter from Queen Mary's Hospital in Paddington, acknowledging the receipt of one Raphael Ditko into the hospital's care and jurisdiction. The letter was signed Jenna Jane Mulbridge. The nurse at the desk gave these documents the most cursory examination possible. She was secretly admiring Dr. Powell's easy self-assurance, Dr. Powell's very impressive outfit, and, to be blunt, Dr. Powell's magnificent body. She herself was only 5'3", so she envied this other woman's height and long legs. She noticed too how well the doctor's black hair, at shoulder length but pulled back quite severely, framed her pale, exquisite face. And she noticed that the blouse was buttoned all the way up to the top, giving no hint of cleavage. Perhaps this was because the doctor's curves were ample, her nipples large and obviously erect, and there was no line or ridge in the blouse's hem to indicate the presence of a brassiere. Any further display would tip over from arousing to indecent. An incongruous image rose into the nurse's mind, making her blush. She imagined herself unbuttoning that blouse, pulling it open on one side or the other and planting a kiss on one of the doctor's breasts. She wasn't gay, had never even had a passing crush on another woman, but the black, bottomless eyes behind the big spectacles seemed to invite such intimacies and promise reciprocal explorations. Or perhaps it was the woman's perfume, which was even more striking than her appearance. At first it had seemed almost harsh, with sweat and earth mixed up in it, but now it had an aching sweetness. "You need to stamp the bottom copy of the letter," the doctor said, in that same thrilling voice. The nurse, flustered, pulled herself together and did so, although the outline of the doctor's face and upper body remained on her eyes like an after-image. but she fumbled for the stamp and applied it with trembling fingers. "And sign," said the doctor. The nurse obeyed. "I believe Mr. Ditko has already been prepared for transfer," the doctor said, folding and pocketing the letter. "I'm sorry to rush you, but we have another call to make tonight and we're already late." In point of fact, they were 15 minutes earlier than their scheduled arrival time, but the nurse wasn't going to spoil the moment by arguing. She was fond of the music of Nick Cave, and a line from one of his songs went through her head right then. "A beauty impossible to endure." She paid the duty manager since she wasn't allowed to leave her station, but she only paid him once, and she hoped he'd take his time in coming. In the meantime, she engaged the doctor in conversation, ignoring the two men as if they didn't exist. Later, she was unable to describe a single thing about them. She wasn't even sure whether they were black or white. They could have been fluorescent green for all she cared. The duty officer arrived all too soon, introduced himself unctuously to the distinguished visitors and took them away along the main corridor out of sight. The nurse watched them go forlornly. She should have asked for a phone number at least. But then, what would she have done with it? She was straight and married. A temporary madness had overtaken her, and now she struggled to fit the memory of it into her definition of herself. What did a woman's breasts taste of? Why did it never occur to her to find out? The duty manager had much the same experience.